She is 55 and for years she believed her best days were behind her, until one small shift in her brain proved her wrong. Her friends described the same thing: less energy, less curiosity, a quiet sense that life was slowly winding down. She believed them because everyone around her repeated the same story about getting older. Then something changed, not in her circumstances, but in what she noticed each day. A new walking route, a conversation with a stranger, a small hobby she had never tried before. Nothing about her age changed, nothing about her health changed overnight either. What changed was where her attention went. Scientists have actually studied this shift for decades, and the explanation lives inside a small structure deep in your brainstem. It decides every second what deserves your attention and what gets ignored completely. Today we are going to look at what that structure actually does, why it works differently as people age, and why that difference might be the best kept secret about getting older. Let us talk about that structure. It is called the reticular activating system, and scientists sometimes just call it the RAS. Think of your brain as a busy office building. Every second, an enormous amount of information tries to walk through the front door at once. Sounds, smells, thoughts, memories, worries, all of it arriving at once. If all of that reached your conscious mind without filtering, you would be overwhelmed within seconds. The RAS works like a secretary sitting at that front door. It decides who gets waved through to the meeting room of your conscious attention and who gets asked to wait outside. This is why you can sit in a noisy room full of conversations and barely notice any of them. Yet the moment someone across the room says your name, you hear it instantly. That is not a coincidence or a trick of hearing. That is your filter deciding in real time that this particular sound matters more than everything else happening around you. For a long time, researchers assumed this filter simply wore down with age, like an old hinge getting stiffer every year. But when scientists actually studied how attention changes across a person's life, they found something far more interesting than decline. The filter does not break down, it gets rebuilt around a completely different set of priorities. A psychologist at Stanford University named Laura Carstensen spent decades studying exactly where people's attention goes as they move through life. Her research uncovered something that has now been confirmed again and again by other scientists. It is called the positivity effect. Older adults, without trying, without any conscious effort at all, begin noticing and remembering good things more readily than bad things. This does not happen because people decide to think positively. It happens far below the surface, at the level of attention and memory themselves, before a person even becomes aware of what they are focusing on. The explanation is not about the brain getting weaker. It is about the brain getting wiser, regarding how it spends a limited resource, which is your attention. When people sense that time feels less endless than it once did, something shifts inside the mind. The brain stops chasing endless novelty for its own sake and starts prioritizing what actually feels meaningful and emotionally rich. This is a strange kind of good news hiding inside something that sounds like loss. The very awareness that time is not infinite seems to be the trigger that makes people naturally better at noticing joy. It is not that youth is wired for happiness and age is not. It is that maturity rewires itself toward happiness simply by changing what the filter at the front door decides is worth letting through. There is another piece of this puzzle, and it comes from a study that followed thousands of people for many years. Researchers tracked more than 6,000 adults over 14 years, and they measured one specific thing: how strongly each person felt their life had direction and purpose. The people who scored high on that sense of purpose lived longer than the people who did not. And this held true no matter their age when the study began. It also held true even after researchers accounted for general happiness and emotional well-being separately. In other words, feeling like your life matters is not just a nice idea. It behaves like a measurable factor in how long you live. Think about a woman in her early 60s, a retired engineer who spent months convinced her professional experience was no longer useful to anyone. Everything shifted when she started leading a small technical workshop for teenagers at her local community centre. Her age did not change. Her medical history did not change. What changed was where she chose to point her attention and her time. Now think about a man in his late 50s, recently divorced, who assumed that chapter of connection in his life was closed for good. He decided to try one new thing every single Saturday, a different route through the city, an unfamiliar dish, a short conversation with someone he had never spoken to before. Within a few months, he noticed something himself. He was catching more good moments in ordinary days, not because he forced himself to, but because he had simply given his brain more reasons to look for them. Now let us talk about something the internet loves to oversell, usually called dopamine support. Countless videos promise strange tricks to hack your dopamine levels, and most of it has little real science behind it. The actual research is simpler and honestly more useful than any trick. Physical activity directly engages the same brain systems responsible for motivation, energy, and pleasure, including pathways that rely on dopamine and noradrenaline. This is not a coincidence. It is a direct, well-documented effect of movement on the brain's reward circuitry. That is the real reason a short walk or a bit of exercise tends to leave people feeling sharper and lighter within the same day, not days or weeks later. You do not need an intense workout for this. Gardening counts, dancing in your kitchen counts, a brisk walk around the block counts. What matters is that the body moves regularly enough for these systems to stay engaged. That positive shift in attention we talked about earlier happens at the earliest, most automatic stage of how the brain processes information. A person does not consciously decide to search for good things. The brain starts reaching for them faster than it reaches for the bad, without any deliberate effort at all. Put movement and this natural shift together, and you get a brain that is already leaning toward joy and gets an extra push toward it every time the body moves. So what can you actually do with all of this starting today? Here are 5 simple steps. First, do one small new thing today, a different walking route, an unfamiliar radio station in the car, a dish you have never cooked before. Your brain needs a reason to pay attention, and one new moment a day is enough to start. Second, spend 15 minutes doing something where your experience helps someone else. A conversation with a grandchild, advice for a neighbour, a reply in an online group about something you know well. That feeling of being needed is tied directly to the longevity research we talked about earlier. Third, add 20 minutes of movement that feels good to your body, not something you force yourself through. A walk, a bit of gardening, dancing around your kitchen. This taps straight into your brain's reward system, and most people feel the difference the same day. Fourth, before bed, say out loud or write down one good moment from your day, even a tiny one. This trains that positivity effect we described earlier, pointing your attention exactly where it already wants to go as you age. Fifth, once a week, plan a call or a visit with someone who makes you feel at ease, not out of obligation, but because you genuinely enjoy their company. Strong social connection shows up again and again in longevity research, right alongside sleep and nutrition. Remember the woman from the beginning of this video, convinced her best days were behind her. Nothing about her age changed, and nothing about her circumstances changed overnight either, What changed was where she pointed her attention, one small choice at a time. Her brain was not shutting down, it was quietly getting better at noticing what actually matters. So tell me, which of these 5 steps do you think you could start today? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more science-backed ways to think clearly, feel deeply, and live fully as you age, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next video.